So section 3 part 2 we're doing today. Part 1 of course was the squares with the hearts. That's finished now, and section 2 is a section of granny stripes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows in total, and they stop at the end of the square, so they don't go all the way around the corner. The reason why, as you can see here, is that we have a nice icicle snowflake snowflake square to go into the corner. It's made up in the same, or the start of it is the same as the squares in section 1. It just is a slightly different size, and I'll talk you through that later. But this is the section we're going to be doing today. Now I've done 3 sides so far, so I've got the 4th to show you, and I'll just swing my blanket over because we're going to start it on the reverse side of the blanket. So I'll do that and I'll come back when I've got it all set up, ready to start. Right, so I've turned my blanket over. I've got it kind of bunched on my lap at the moment, so it's a little bit tricky, but we'll manage. And I am starting with the dark green, and I've attached it in the corner of the dark purple square. So this is where I'm showing you that we're leaving this square corner open for the snowflake square later. Right, so I am going to be working with treble stitches, which is double in US terms, treble in UK terms, and I've chained 2 therefore, and I'm going to put 1 treble stitch into that corner space. Right, that's the first slight difference to normally doing rounds of granny stripe going all the way around a blanket. We want to have a nice straight edge going up the side of this group of 5 rows. So instead of doing 3 stitches in the corner, which you would normally do if you're going around the corner, we've done the chain 2, which is the equivalent of the first treble and 1 treble, and then into the next space 3 trebles, and along to the next one. I have an end sitting here, but that's because the purple, but that's because my preference is to leave these outside ends until we've crocheted along, and then I finish them off later. Right, so now we've done 2 blocks of 3 trebles, and now we've come to a part where the 2 squares meet each other. And we're going to treble 1 in the first corner space, then yarn over, go into the same corner space, pull up a loop so that you've got 3 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through 2. So that's the first half of a treble stitch, and we're going to leave it at that, and we're going to yarn over and go into the next corner space, yarn over, pull up the loop so that you've got 4 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through 2, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through all 3. And that's the decreasing, treble 2 together, or DC 2 together if you're in the US. But that gives you 2 stitches ending up as 1 stitch, and then finishing that block with another treble crochet stitch. So that gives us the block of, or the cluster of 3 stitches, but sitting over the middle of the join. And then we can continue 1, 2, 3 trebles, and another block of 3 trebles. And then we're at the next corner. I'll do it once more. This is the treble 2 together, decreasing stitch to create the block over the corner. So it's treble 1 in the first corner space, yarn over, put your hook into the same corner space, yarn over and pull up a loop, 3 loops, yarn over and pull through the first 2 only, leaving the 2 loops on the hook, and then yarn over and go into the next corner space, yarn over and pull up your loop so that you've got 4 loops on the hook, yarn over and pull through the first 2, and you've got 3 loops left on the hook, yarn over and pull through all 3. And you can see that inverted V shape, which means that you've decreased 2 stitches down to 1, and then you finish off with 1 more treble 1. So far I've covered 2 of the squares, and I have done my decreasing clusters over the joins. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to work along now until I get to the end of this row, and I'll come back to show you how I finish off the end of this row and start the next colour for the next row. So I'll see you then. I've got along to the end of the row now, and I've just got one last cluster of 3 trebles to put in. 1, am I in camera? 2 and 3. And now we're at the end of the row. Now remember, when we started with 2 stitches, the chain 2 and 1 treble. So all I'm going to do in this end is 1, 2 trebles. But while I'm making the second treble, I'm going to change to my next colour, which is the violet shade or the dark purple. So yarn over. I've done 1 treble already. Yarn over, put your hook in, pull up your loop, yarn over and pull through the first 2, but leave the 2 loops on your hook, because this is where we're going to change colour. And I'm going to take my new colour and put it over the hook and pull it through. And that's it, on the hook, ready to go. And I like just to tie off the ends. And the reason I tie off the ends, I can cut this green because I'm finished with it. The reason I tie off the ends is to stop all these loops getting too loose. And we're going to have to sew in the ends anyway, but I just like to put a little knot in and pull it up nice and firmly, just to keep it all in the right tension. So there we have the violet purpley colour on the hook now, and I'm going to chain 2, and it's time to turn. So I'm going to turn this over. Right, I had to get myself organised there to get the blanket turned over. It's getting a little bit big to do it easily under the camera. So I chained 2 with my purple, and it's now on the right side. Now, you're not going to make each row the same. The last row we started with a chain 2 and then another treble stitch in the same space, but this time that chain 2 is going to be on its own, because the next thing we're going to do is come along to the next space along and put our 3 trebles cluster in. 2, 3. So what we have at the beginning of row 2 is chain 2. There's a tiny space. See if I can use my other hook. A tiny space here, which we'll be working into at the end of the row, and then treble 3. And all you need to do with this row now is just work straight along, right over the top of the decreasing cluster from the previous row. So, you know, you don't split that by mistake. So I'm just about at it. So I'll just work that. You can see it does look slightly bigger, but it does just have the 1, 2, 3 stitches. So it is 1 treble cluster. We're going right over the top of that and continue. Like that. So again, I'll go all the way along and I'll see you at the other end of this row. Right, so I've got to the end of the second row, just about, with my purple colour, and I've got one space left, and then there's this funny little bit where there was 2 stitches, and I'll explain what we do there. Before I go on to that bit, just let me say that the first row, I should have said, the first row of the dark green had 43 clusters in it, and that includes these clusters of 2 at each end. And the second row also has 43 clusters because we're not going round corners, we're not increasing in size as we go round, so the cluster count will stay the same because we're going up in straight rows. And this second row, if I put this last treble 3 in, now if you look at this last treble 3, that from the first treble 3 at the beginning of the row to this one is 43, but if you look at it, it's stopped short of the edge, so we have one more stitch to put in, and that's in between these 2 individual stitches from the first row. So there was the chain 2 and the treble 1, and we're going to just split in between the 2 and put in our last treble stitch. One treble stitch will just... Apologies for that, I was interrupted by a phone call, and that doesn't happen very often these days. So I've got to the end, and like I said, I had one single extra treble stitch to put in between these 2 green stitches from the previous row, and I've just started it because I don't want to finish it because I'm going to use this stitch to join in my new colour, my third colour. So I've cut my yarn ready, and I've got my new colour, which happens to be the variegated batik yarn. But that's the one that we used for the join as you go in the middle, and just lay it off over the hook and pull it through. And like I did before, I prefer to tie it to the end just to keep everything nice and firm. Now, round row 3 is exactly the same as row 1. So I'll just chain 2 and turn, and then I'll show you what happens. So I've chained 2, and I'm going to try to turn this successfully while the camera's running. There we go. Let's just make sure we're in camera. And so what we're doing here is exactly the same as we did in the first row. So we've chained 2, so we want to put one more treble 1 into the same space, and there is a space there. So I'm going to put my treble 1 in there, like that. Now, apart from these ends, which are a little bit confusing, you can see that this is a nice straight edge, and that's what you want because we need a nice straight edge when we come to add that extra square into the corner. And then for this row 3, all you need to do is work your way along with your treble 3 clusters. And the nice thing about the varied yarn is that you'll see slightly different colours in each one. See, this one is turning a sort of purple, and there's a little bit of white which ties in with the snowflake design, and there's also the pinky shade. So all the shades are incorporated in this variegated yarn. So there we have row 3, and when you get along to the end of row 3, you can see that there is a space at the end, so you'll put 2 treble stitches with your and you don't need to change colour at the end of this row because you're going to be using this yarn for the next 3 rows. So you just need to treble 2 and then chain 2 and turn for the next row, and I'll just let you see again what that looks like. And that is your block of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and those are the 3 rows of the variegated yarn. So that's your job, to do that, and you can do that on all 4 sides, and then I'll be back to show you how to make the square and how to fit it in the corner. So I'll see you then. Here is the square to go into the 4 corners of the blanket. And now, of course, you'll need to make 4 of these, but rounds 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 are identical to the center squares, so you can use the pattern for that. They're all the snowflake colours, so that's the cream for the first 3 rounds and then the purple for the rounds 4 and 5. And then turning after the last round, we're making it slightly smaller. This is where we part company from the squares of section 1. And all you need to do is another round in green, the dark green this time, and it's just a simple round of treble clusters all the way around. So we're not doing any of the single or the double crochet small bits of colour. This is just a very simple round of treble clusters. And once that's done and you've got your ends sewn in, remember, of course, that the front post stitches are on the front, so this is the front of the square. We can now attach it to one of the corners of the blanket. And I'm just going to stop the video for a sec while I bring the blanket back. Right, that's my blanket manoeuvred into position. The blanket is on the front, so it's easy now to tell which is the front because, of course, the little hearts are uppermost, and the square is on its front as well. Now, this actually breaks my own rules a little bit because my final round of the square, the dark green, is on its right side, and so is the rest of the square. When you've done any joining squares with me in the past, you'll know that I usually end up with my final round on its wrong side, like that, so that it's joining to the right of the blanket, sort of opposite, just to keep the balance. But I can't do that with this square because of the size. It has to be to fit into the corner. So be it. We're joining with the continuous join as you go around the outside of the square and joining it to the blanket at the same time. So this is the right side of the square, and I'm going to start in any corner, and I'm going to be using half treble stitches, which is what I usually do for a join. So chain 2, 1, 2, and 1, 2 half trebles in the first corner. That's half of the first corner. And then into the next, and 3 half trebles into the next space. 2, 3, and so on along this side. 1, 2, 3. And I'll stop when I get half of the second corner done. So I'm just about there. So I've just got the corner to do, and I'm going to stop at the first 3 trebles. No chains in this corner because I'm going to join it to the blanket. So once you've come up with the first side and done half of your corner, this is where you have to do a little bit of guesswork, because you've got the spaces ready for you in this small square, 1, 2, 3, 4, but there aren't any obvious spaces on these rounds of granny stripes. So you just need to do a little bit of guesswork and put your hook in somewhere pretty near the corner and make your slip stitch, and then back to finish the corner of the square. Now just roughly straight up from where this stitch is, you can put your hook in to make another slip stitch, and then 3 half trebles in the next space on the square. And again, put your hook in straight up from that and slip stitch, and then 3 half trebles. 1, 2, 3. And then time to get to the corner of the square, and we can just work up. That's easier because you've got spaces to work into. 3 half trebles into the next space on the small square, 3 half trebles into the next space, 3 half trebles, and you can see how neatly that is just attaching into that corner. So we're at the corner of this square now, so I'm going to put in my 3 half trebles, 1, 2, 3. And like before, I recommend that when you get to the corner, you work a slip stitch into at least 2 of the corners. It could be that pale green square and this corner here, or it could be into the dark purple, but that way it anchors it. And then you can swing everything round and do the same thing down the other side. I'll try and get this into camera. Are we there? So I've got the corner done. I just need to finish the corner of the large square. 1, 2, 3. And then find the space in the dark purple square. Just make sure that's it, yes. And 3 half trebles. 1, 2, 3. And then find the next space. 3 half trebles. 1, 2, 3. Let's just pull this back, and we're at the corner of the purples, the small purple square. So into the next 2, 3, and then into straight up from that to put the slip stitch in, into the next space. 1, 2, 3, and then find another space. That one was quite easy to find because it was the end of the row where there was a space, and now we've just got to slip stitch. We've slip stitched, now we've just got to put 3 half trebles into the corner of the large green square and slip stitch into that corner somewhere. Might take it up to there, yep, right up into the corner, and slip stitch. And then all we need to do is swing this round again and finish off the square. I'm not going to attempt to bring the whole blanket round. I'll just work this best I can. 1, 2, 3. My table is cluttered with the tripod for the camera and my iPad, and of course my cup of tea, so it makes swinging things around quickly a little bit dangerous. But I'll just finish this side. This is the 4th side of the green square, and then I'll let you see it. And of course we only did half of that very first corner, so that needs to be finished off with 3 half trebles and chain 2. and then you can slip stitch into the top of the first chain 2, pick up 2 loops and fasten off. And that's your square in position. There you can see it, and it's looking nice, and I'll just get that into camera. It's looking nice and smooth and flat, and it's filled that corner beautifully. So you've got another 3 of these to make up and attach into the corners before we move on to the next section.